we got to do something else. Get rid of the we don't need it.
Yeah, that's going to be controversial.
You're an assassin. Nobody's supposed to even know who you are. That's your whole deal, is you're supposed to be unseen.
That was the most annoying shit I've ever seen in my entire life.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
We feel that Assassin's Creed has kind of lost its way in its current trajectory. If it was within our power, what would we do to fix it and get it back on track? And for those of you that are vehemently against our point of views, I do want to reassure you that neither Jay nor myself have any employment nor contract with Ubisoft. They don't care about our opinion. We aren't doing this. So if we are talking about doing something to your franchise that you don't like, fear not. They don't care what we think, nor do they care what you think. So nobody's going to, it doesn't matter anyway, but we're going to talk about how would we fix this franchise that we feel has lost its way.
So my first point, and it wasn't necessarily that I didn't like it, but I know that a lot of the community didn't like it, was the size of Assassin's Creed Odyssey and how it got so obtuse you would almost forget your way. So mine is the one city approach, and this stems from playing a lot of Cyberpunk 2077 lately, on what I think is one of the best open world maps we've ever had in gaming. It has one city with tons of verticality, and then it has some outlying areas, a desert area, a wealthy residential area, an industrial zone, and that's it. And I think an Assassin's Creed game could absolutely be successful if it was like modern day London, and then that be it. Modern day London, you get the docks, maybe you get the wharf, you get the countryside, a little bit of it, and that's it. Instead of this island hopping archipelago that we got in Odyssey. And I loved it. It was a great map as far as being able to encompass all of Greece, but maybe we didn't need all of Greece. I think that's one way we could do it, and that would allow us to focus less on baggage and more on substance.
Yeah, and that's one where like I can understand that perspective, and that's another thing, guys. Is Jay and I's opinion may differ as we go through this, and that's okay. So I can understand that happening in some situations because, like you said, like Cyberpunk is very vertical. They're able to do what they do with that one city. One, because that city is large, and two, because it's very vertical. So they can stack things on top of one another, as opposed to a lot of these maps from back in the day where everything, you've got, little one-story huts and things like that.
Yeah.
So they have to spread them out across the ground as opposed to like building them up and stacking them. So it would definitely have to be one of those situations where the location and the time would have to accommodate for that verticality, because that's the one thing that we would not want to do. Is you would not want a reduced area to reduce the amount of things that you could do. I can understand why that would work in certain situations. I also don't mind huge maps. I love huge maps as long as there's something to do in them. And yes, like you said, that's the problem that they have had many times, is that they would have these massive maps with almost nothing to do in them. If you want to know how to use a massive map, look at The Witcher. You cannot get from point A, no matter how near or far your point A to point B is, you cannot get from one area to another without the temptation, at least, to do 6 other things. Or Red Dead Redemption 2. There's so much that comes up, and that never happened in these massive Assassin's Creed worlds. You never got distracted from your point because there wasn't anything going on. If you're going to do a big map, populate it, put stuff in it, actually do things. This is probably going to be a really controversial one. One of my problems that I come around and that I've kind of been tired of is the story. It started off quite focused in the original trilogy. You had Altair and you had Ezio, and you had this whole thing. I guess we'll call it the Desmond Miles
arc.
Yeah. And but in more recent games, the Templars have kind of fallen off of being included in the storyline. And I talked a little bit about with some of the people in the comments. This is one where I get people's attachment to the lore. I understand, but I would reboot it and find something else to ignite this feud between the Assassins and the Templars. I'm not going to do any spoilers for anybody out there that hasn't played them, because it is an interesting story. I don't want to spoil anything, but the story, the overarching story that ties all of these games together gets out there. Out there. We're talking precursor race
That's
before
an
humans.
understatement, really. Yeah.
There's so many sci-fi elements.
The Isu.
Lost technology. Yeah, Isu, the Apples of Eden, this lost technology. I mean, it
Yeah.
gets far out. You also have this stuff where it becomes this world-threatening thing, and you have to literally save the world from impending sudden destruction. That's too much. That's too much. Like, let's keep this. Okay, I'm fine with having even lost technology or lost knowledge. I think that's a great seed to start with. But this thing where we have like a precursor race and all this, I think it's too much. I think it's going a bit too crazy. I would like to have something that they do both want, but it's got to be something that is big and important, but it doesn't threaten the existence of the world. And I also want it to not overshadow the fact that these are two diametrically opposed forces, that there is a grudge between these two for whatever reason. But I think we just need to reboot this so that we can keep it from game to game to game about assassins versus Templars.
First, I want to wholeheartedly agree with you on this topic. I absolutely, and I'm going to use this word a lot because this franchise is that. It's obtuse. And the story is insane. And you're going out there and we're equating Greek gods with precursor races. And a lot of game franchises use forerunners or precursor races. And they do it well. I think what hosed Assassin's Creed, it's not their fault. When Jade Raymond pitched this thing at the 06 E3, I don't think they thought it was going to grow this far, especially just being inspired by Prince of Persia.
They definitely outkicked their coverage on this one.
Yes, but they locked themselves into this Assassins versus Templar thing because their first game was set in the Crusades, where the Templars were actually relevant. And now we have so many games that are set in a timeline where there was no such thing as a Templar. So they've had to come up with these ancillary groups that they're saying eventually become
they're spin-offs of the Templars or they're secretly a Templar faction or something like that.
So we get Odyssey, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the oldest from the timeline standpoint of the games. Yes, it is. So it's about 100 years after the Battle of Thermopylae. Dark Ages England in Valhalla was pre-Crusades. So I agree with you, but I don't know how we fix that part to where we bring it back into this same. And I'll just admit that I don't know how we.
No, that's just. I'm not writing the story. I'm just saying we need something else. We got to do something else. And I also agree with. I don't think it has to be the Templars. Yeah, I like that concept, though. I do like the fact that there are these two factions that approach things differently, whether it's the Templars or something else. But if you're rebooting Assassin's Creed, I think it's got to be the Templars just because that's like the built-in thing at this point that goes
Agreed.
with it. But along with that storyline, and here's another that's probably going to be controversial, get rid of the Animus. Get rid of the Animus. We don't need it.
Yeah,
the
that's going to be controversial.
The Animus... I honestly think the only reason that we still have the Animus is because of the shock of that first game where they didn't tell you that there's this whole other modern side, and that thing about where you wake up in this white room and all. I think that the Animus, I think, was a prop that they used to introduce this modern element. We don't need it. This whole thing, we're talking about chasing after these people that have documented so much of their timelines, the Templars, the Assassins, both of them. Crazy amounts of notes and scrolls and books and all of this, and we're going after hidden technology. Why do we need an Animus to know what happened before? I think a better way of storytelling, as opposed to finding some excuse to put someone inside an Animus to then play through a past thing, is have a parallel story and just say like, hey, we're in Egypt because we're looking for this thing that was deposited here by a previous assassin back in this time, and we get to play both of those. That's the other thing, is instead of something like where we had in Black Flag, where you're playing in the Caribbean, but it's based out of Canada, where where the modern day is in Canada. Have the modern day and the past stuff, if you're going to have them in the same place. And so you can say like, hey, we're in we're in the Caribbean because Edward Kenway before us deposited something here and we need to find it. That can be documented in journals and things like that. You don't need the Animus. It builds too many requirements. It pigeonholes you into the story that you have to tell. You have to either find somebody that's a descendant of Edward Kenway or whatever assassin that you are trying to relive, or find some way that you don't, some way to replay it where you don't need the relative, but you can still. It's just unnecessary. It's just unnecessary. We can play both, where the reason that we know about what's happening in the past is because it was documented and journaled or whatever, and the thing that we're doing in the future just relates to it. They don't have to be plugged into an Animus. I think it's an unnecessary trope at this point that's just not needed.
I both agree and disagree with you. I like having the Animus as a very beginning. Hey, and I agree with what you said. I think you come into the game, they're like, hey, we located so-and-so, and you're the direct. I think you should already be part of the Abstergo or whatever at that point, but put you in the Animus, you go to that world, you finish the whole story, and you come out at the end. And they're like, hey, we went and recovered this item while you were in, okay, cool. Thank you for doing that for me. Or if you're going to make us pop out mid-story and break our immersion, then I should have the same skill set and the same weapon set, and we better be on the run in a truck with the Animus and then get knocked off the road and have to fight, or I have to go kill somebody in the modern day as an assassin in, I don't care where, Philadelphia, for God's sakes, and I have to jump off the fucking Liberty Bell and take out a modern day politician. Obviously, that's not real, but still,
in the game,
that's my point. Is make it worthwhile.
That was one of the things that made it even more frustrating in the Desmond trilogy, is because whenever you went to the modern day, it still, like, whenever you ran as Desmond, it was like running as, like, it had all the same controls. They just didn't let you do anything. So, in some of these others, you go to the modern day and it's first person or this or that, and it's very clearly not the same control scheme. That was one of the things that made it so infuriating in those originals, was because it was still the same perspective, the same controls, the same movement, and then you just didn't do anything with it. And I hated that. No, I 100% agree that we need to be able to do things in the modern day. And I also think that not every game needs a modern day aspect of it. I think you can do this where, hey, this game just takes place in ancient Greece. Then there's other ones where it's like, okay, this game will go back and forth for story reasons. I think that every game should do something where the storyline, the past storyline, wraps up and then plants just a little seed for the continuing overarching story. Do it like you do these like well-planned TV series or something like that. But not every one of them needs a modern component. Some of them we can just be in the Caribbean or whatever for the heck of it, and the entirety of that story is start to finish there. And like you said, maybe at the very end, some little stinger, Hideo Kojima style, at the very end that pushes the overall narrative forward just a little bit right before the credits roll, or maybe even after the credits roll, or something like that. But I don't think it's necessary to have a past and a present storyline every entry.
That's true. One of my other points, and this kind of hinges off of or bounds off my first one, but make it more than about who we are as a character. Allow us to build a stable of assassins that we can choose to take.
They played with this concept, and they just never fleshed it out.
Allow us to build a stable that we can choose to use or not use, or that we can choose to pimp out and go on contracts for us, and then they pay us a tribute. And with that, allow us to build our bureau, to improve our bureau, create more training stuff, allow us to get more contracts, and have people going out to seek more influence within the clergy and within the government and within local big brains that will give us more intel. So going into a contract, we could possibly maximize, much like Mass Effect, where you're getting all your assets in 3, allow us to build that up to make our mission 100% combat effective before we even get there. That's just the thing I thought about, is just expanding on who we are as an assassin. And we're not just this solo dude that And they kind of played with that in Valhalla with the whole Ravensthorpe thing, but that was it.
Yeah, it never really got fleshed out. And I think they did it with a couple other games where they did something similar, but it just never got fleshed out. You never really did it. You never really got to do what you're talking about there and really properly build it out, and certainly not build relationships with anybody that you're sending out. Also, along those same lines, whenever it comes to the games and everything that you're able to do within those, do not make the playable character a historical figure. Don't do it. Why would you do that? It's so stupid. I don't know why they did it in Shadows. I think they might have just done it as an excuse so they can say, well, hey, I don't know why you're upset. It's a historical figure.
Is that really the only game they've done that?
That's
Shadows?
the only one that I'm aware of where there was an act where you played as a historical figure. All the other games, they had every game had historical figures, but they weaved them into the story. You did not play as them because, again, you're an assassin. Nobody's supposed to even know who you are. You know, that's your whole deal, is you're supposed to be unseen throughout this whole thing. And it also gives you less choice, or mentally, it just makes you feel like you have less choice because you have somebody that's got an already determined path in history, even though this is obviously not straight up history, but it just doesn't work right. It doesn't feel right because I think it ruins your ability to tell a story because there's certain things that you can't avoid. What if he dies? Well, he's not going to die because that's Ben Franklin, and we know Ben Franklin didn't die at this point, or whatever it is. You know, whoever they're trying to make you be. It just doesn't make any sense. That's my thing. Whenever it comes to story elements as well, it's just don't try to do that again. You did it once; it was awful. Let's not do that again.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you there. And throw wrenches in our plans, man. I like the idea of a dynamic event that I don't see coming, where I have worked my butt off to get into position to do this perfect kill. All of a sudden, from across the way, I see somebody else dive out of a tree and kill my guy. I mean, just think of your initial reaction to that the first time. You're going to be like, wait, what? You know? So add stuff like that.
What I would like to see them carry over from RPGs would be stuff like that, where it does allow some choice, which they played a little bit with other entries where you get to choose dialogue options, things like that. But that would be one that I would like to incorporate, maybe even to the point that it influenced some of the ending of the storyline at some point for that game. Like maybe there's different endings, but the ability to have influence in that way based off of your decisions, or maybe you didn't plan sufficiently and your plans get uprooted. Like you said, another person kills your target or something goes awry and something explodes, whatever. But just have those sorts of things. What I don't want is the RPGification of the combat and the leveling. And that's the big thing that I have a problem with. And that is the combat. I don't like the combat or the level system that we have right now. That's what I want to get rid of. Before the Assassin's Creed entries, up through maybe Syndicate might have been the last one that did it. I can't remember, but somewhere before Origin, paired animation system is what the combat system was, and you'll find this in the Arkham games, for Batman Arkham games, and even like Sleeping Dogs, which oddly enough, even though it by far predates the Arkham games, actually has a much deeper paired animation system. But the paired animation system is essentially, you can have any number of variables that once they line up in a certain way, it keys an animation to signal. So that could be, the enemy is swinging and I'm hitting block. These two conditions are met. Play this animation, and we would get these really intricate block and parry and counter moves. And that was really cool. But it could get super deep, which we got in something like Syndicate, where you would be in a fight with 3 people, and he could take out, there would be finishers that involved 3 people. Like where it's like, throw that there, that's stuck in this guy. Now I'm going to hit this guy with this.
I love like that game, man.
Or even it would know like, you are close to a ledge. You're doing a finishing blow on somebody. So then he would do a thing where it's like, maybe he like sticks a knife through a guy's hand and holds him against the wall and then does something else. So it's these things that allow these animations to continue on as long as these certain criteria are met. And the way that we've kind of evolved that before they stopped using it in Assassin's Creed was we just added to the variables. Okay, now let's factor, what if 3 guys are attacking you? What if 4 guys are attacking you? What if you're fighting against a wall? What if you're fighting on the edge of a rooftop? And all these different things that created all these different scenarios for animations. And it allowed these it made you feel like a superhero. Like I said, I frequently said, I frequently said that I would love to get into fights where it was like me versus 10, 12 dudes because I knew that I could take them. And
yeah, on Black Flag, I used to get surrounded on the roof with 20, 30 guys. Have a guy shoot me in the distance, have to roll out of that into a parry, counter, hit, knock, kick a guy off the roof.
And
it was wonderful.
It looked like a movie. It looked like a movie. You're just like doing all these things. And they got rid of
Jack
that.
Sparrow, bitch.
Yeah, now what you get is an RPG type of like an action RPG type of a combat system. So now it's hitboxes. It's no longer paired animations, hitboxes. Now everybody has these large health bars. You got to swing, and sometimes you can swing it at the air. You're not locked onto somebody. You can swing at the air. You can swing at somebody, and it's not hitting them because of the hitbox, and you just look like an idiot. You don't get this fluid thing. Like the parry system is like they swing, maybe you hit block, and you flip your sword up, and they kind of get rocked. But there's no animation that accompanies that to make it feel like your guy is really like you should feel like a superhero as an assassin. I don't know why they got rid of that, because it felt so good, and the animations are so crisp and clean. Like you did get finishing animations, and you still do have finishing animations in the current Assassin's Creed series, but gone are the parries, the counters, all of those things that really made it feel super stylish and like poetry in motion. Yeah. That stuff's all gone, and I miss it. And that's what I am really disappointed about hearing, with that being taken out of Black Flag, because Black Flag had that. And you think pirates, you think swashbuckling, ting, 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 ting. Like you think about these saber battles, these saber tools, Pirates of the Caribbean. That's not going to be there if they do this. That's gone. They're not going to have these really intricate action movie set piece style scenes if they do that.
I thought Ghost of Tsushima did a better job with the combat model than like Odyssey or Origins or Valhalla. I do like, of all three of those, I liked Odyssey's the best because I thought it had at least a halfway decent block.
And it was one of the first, if not the first, where they RPGified, and I think that's the best they ever implemented it. If you're not going to have, was Origin. I hate the leveling system. I think it's awful. What I do like, and somebody mentioned that they like the RPG or the leveling system because it allowed for a lot more choices whenever it comes to attire. Now, I'm with you on choices for attire. I love that. I've got no problem with choices of attire. You don't need a level system to do that. You can just have those pieces of attire. So it's like you don't need to have, I like this hood or this cape or whatever. You don't need to have, it's like, okay, well, I now need to find a level 17 version of the same hood that I like because the one I have right now is a level 14 and it's just too,
that's
like my armor's
shit.
It's stupid. Like it should just be a thing where it's like you just get it and you have it. That's it. Like there's no reason for leveling. There are other ways to increase the difficulty of boss fights or to keep you out of areas that they would rather you not be in at that point. There's other ways to do that outside of just over leveling the competition. And again, we know
just
that the only
Skyrim did.
Yeah, the only reason that leveling even exists is because they wanted to monetize the grind. Because remember when they did that thing, they're like, "Oh, hey, but actually, if you pay us money, you can earn XP twice as fast or whatever." And they did it to monetize it. They didn't do it because it actually benefited the gameplay. And so that's what I was talking about 2 weeks ago, where it's like you don't have any sort of visual identity until you max out your level and you have everything, because until then you're just like, okay, well, this is my highest level hood, this is my highest level tunic, these are my highest level boots.
It was annoying.
So it's like, okay, well, the style doesn't match. So go ahead and throw in the different pieces and let us mix and match and change the colors. Just don't make us have to get it 18 times or 25 times to keep having it as we level up. That's stupid and it's pointless.
Yeah, I think whatever level you are, your gear should just be matched. I don't think that should be another concern of mine. Exactly what you said with the hood. That was the most annoying shit I've ever seen in my entire life. I was putting together the Achilles set in Odyssey, and I grabbed one piece too early, and it was like a level 8, and the rest of it was like level 36. And trying to get that helmet from an 8, I'm like, just give us transmog and call it a day.
Yeah. So now you had to either deal with it where it's like, okay, I could either have everything look the way I want it to look, but my equipment is under leveled, or I can have everything leveled appropriately and all of your attire is completely thrown off because it doesn't align. It looks completely mismatched.
So I've got a bullet here that just says F history, and which is funny for me because I love history. But how about let's break the mold, man? Let's go to space. Let's jack into a simulated world. Oh, wait, we're kind of already doing that, but you know what I mean. Let's go full Inception and get paid contracts to invade people's dreams and kill them inside their dream.
That's definitely ambitious.
That's my point, is break the wheel, man. Break it. Let's do some crazy shit. And we could go to realistic space, like within our solar system.
Now it might be interesting if there was like some sort of thing where like maybe for a mission, some sort of modern thing where you're in the space station or something like that. But I'm not all for turning this into a space opera or anything like that. But I do agree, and we've mentioned it before, that we need to push the timeline up a little bit more. Like we talked about, like if you did like a 1960s Assassin's Creed or something Dallas, like that, Texas. And yeah, you tied in Kennedy with it and all that stuff,
or Roswell.
Yeah, like it'd be awesome to do. So like bring it a little bit closer, to modern time, and let us actually start to play around with some of these more modern things. So I wouldn't want it to be a thing where it's like, hey, we're on Mars and it's still Assassin's Creed. That might be a bridge too far.
Awesome. We'll call it Assassins of Fact.
But I definitely agree that we need to just kind of shake it up a little bit and move in. And I guess one of the last things, speaking of stories, one of the last things that I had is that the ability to be a Templar. So you wouldn't need to do it every other game or anything like that. But I think, hey, every 3-4 games, give us a game where we play as a Templar and we get to see something from their perspective and their side. And if you want to play around with different combat systems or something like that, do it there. Do it with the Templar game. And I don't want a Templar game where you play like an assassin. I don't want to do that. The whole thing with these two factions is they're diametrically opposed in their approaches and their points of view, their perspectives. When we play as Templars, I want that to be a different feel than whenever you're an assassin. I don't want a Templar jumping out of a tree with a hidden blade and going into the back of somebody's neck.
Like,
if you want to do,
like, what's his name?
Yeah,
Shay Cormac in Rogue.
Like if you want to do some of this RPG-ified combat, I would say experiment with that in the Templar games and do that. So that would be the other thing that I would do, is I would want to continue this thing because I think that's fun whenever you get to play as the other side and get that perspective. But I want them to feel different and decidedly so, very different. And so, yeah, I would say completely separate those two play styles. Like I said, every third game, or like maybe like 3 Assassins games, and then throw in a Templar game, or a 4 Assassins game and a Templar game. Just every once in a while, just sprinkle it in there and make it an actual full experience, not just like a 6-hour whatever. That's the last thing I had. Like, use that. Yeah. So give us our paired animation combat system. Let us keep that in Assassins, and then experiment with the Templar games and try those, because it's more appropriate for that. It makes more sense if it's a Templar versus an Assassin. So there you go. That is how we at Hardcore Casual, if we were given the reins to the system, the keys to the kingdom, if we got to be a part of the machine, that's how we would fix the Assassin's Creed series that we feel has gone off the rails.
I must leave you adieu.